Well, thanks for having me here. It's been interesting doing research. I actually have to confess, I have a bit of a crush on what you all do here in Halifax. I used to be a downtown director back in Asheville a number of years ago, and I don't know if you all know the commercials that you all did for downtown, the dating game, where you showed these folks. And I thought y'all have such an interesting, humorous approach to your city that actually must be baked into your water or something, because another famous Haligonian is this guy. Do y'all know Murray Langston, the unknown comic? Perhaps you should have a statue of him doing this. He lives over in Dartmouth. He's actually retired now. I don't know if he still has the bags, but anyway. I'm from Asheville, North Carolina. I don't know if y'all know where Asheville is. It's up in the mountains of the eastern seaboard, just a couple hours from Atlanta, in the Appalachians, Blue Ridge Parkway area. We have bluegrass music. We're 90,000 people. We have 44 breweries. That's 5,000 people per brewery if you're doing the math on that. And like any quirky little mountain town, we have men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that eat fire. It's your typical little place. Asheville didn't start this way. These are shots of Asheville from the 1990s. That's a 1996 Chevy Celebrity right there. That's not too long ago. That's within my generation. You could blow a cannon off and not hit anybody on Main Street. And we essentially boarded our city up and just left it to rot. We weren't urban people. Anytime somebody tried to talk about the urban environment, we would hear back from the community, that's not who we are. We're rural mountain people. We're not Charleston. We're not New Orleans. Do y'all get that in your community? Like, we're not Toronto. We're not urban, right? Well, what is urbanism? I used to work with this company, Public Interest Projects, which is a for-profit real estate development company that was started by the gentleman in the upper left. Public Interest Projects is essentially puts 75% of their money into sticks and bricks, fixing buildings, and 25% into finding entrepreneurs in seeding businesses. So we started the first vegetarian restaurant that banks said would never work. Asheville is now one of the top 10 vegetarian cities in the country. We own a nightclub that's one of the top 5 nightclubs in the entire country. We essentially take buildings like this and rehab them. It's a very simple development act, right? But the system is set up to actually discourage that. The system is set up to make that more difficult for people. This is a project, I wanted to put this out there just for food for thought. We did a joint venture public-private parking garage opportunity here. This was land that we owned that was essentially a surface parking lot in the middle of downtown. And there was a hot dog king there, which is kind of interesting, but it was just a big surface parking lot. So we're essentially rewarded to sit on this property because we pay very low taxes on this. This is the development idea, so a hotel, some housing, and then a public deck here. This is a cartoon of the legal agreement, because the first thing that happens when the attorneys get involved, you get this 55-page legal document that no one wants to read. So we made a really simple graphic to say that the public owns this and we'll have housing and hotel all around it. We're essentially baking taxes on top of a public investment, right? How do we earn money for our community while we're doing a project? It was interesting, the city actually tried to get us to buy spaces on the deck for our residents, and we're like, why? If we pay for those spaces, we're gonna put up a big reserve sign and nobody else could use them. And then we're gonna take the cost of that parking and put it into the cost of the unit. We'd rather our people be afforded the opportunity to not have a car. And then when they leave, if they have a parking pass, they can go wherever, go hiking, but you all could sell the space again. You'll make more money. The community will get more wealth, right? This is how we were treated in the newspaper. As actually in our independent magazine that we helped fund, we were treated like this big boss hog kind of developer. It was kind of fun. Communities have a hard time understanding the role of the developer in the society, and you just have to take it. So this project, this is the taxes paid here before it was built. Here it is now. It's not even done. There will be a third building sitting on top of this soon. Or I'm a graphic guy, let me make a graphic for you. This is a 2,900% growth in your revenue, or this is $11,000 compared to $300,000. You know, come on, Joe, this is a community investment. I could put my money in other forms of investment. So if you kept $1 in downtown Asheville, it grew twofold. Our downtown grew twofold over 10 years, which is impressive growth for an urban environment. This is if you put your money in the S&P 500 or NASDAQ. Well, what if you put your money into this public asset? This is the growth of taxes. Oh, here, it's up here. This is the growth in your taxes that we grew our community wealth. This isn't for us, this is for all of us, right? This is our tax dollars. Go out and buy 3,000% more garbage cans, I don't care. You know, how do we do more wealth for our community? And what we found is that people are painfully illiterate on how their cities actually operate. They don't look at the data of what's sitting right there hiding in plain sight. And really stepping back, we've lost an understanding what we're really in together with. This is from Oxford Dictionary, the word incorporate, and look what it says: to constitute a company, a city, or other organization is a legal corporation, right? So if we're a $15 million developer, what's your community? Now, it's not just in the states, not just our cities, it's our states, it's our country. Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert Show: the United States is the largest corporation in the world, and I'm such a nerd, I went and looked it up. This is the US code that lists us as a federal corporation. It's not to say that we're a capitalistic corporation, we are a social corporation. It's got to function financially. And it's really no different here in Canada, I suspect in England as well, because we essentially all came from the same mother. We came across the lake, or the pond with this. So my city, as a development entity, is worth $13 billion. My city of 90,000 people is worth $13 billion. It's 6 times the value of Ted Turner. Does Ted Turner wake up every day and just look at Facebook and that's how he's going to make his decisions? Of course not. So why do we let our city do the same thing, do that? Why aren't we having a conversant understanding of what our cities are? So my city is essentially a finite boundary of land that has to be managed. It's just a series of acres, right? A farmer grows on soil crops per acre, per hectare, but you're looking at an economic model of how it all operates. Let's go back to the economics of these crops. So this is one of the buildings that we rehabbed. Here it is here. The city did a streetscape project. So thank you, city, for the subsidy. You gave us a garbage can, a bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. Thank you, city. That's awesome. We didn't pay for it, right? It's a subsidy at our front door. That's true. We put in retail, office, and residential. The tax value went from $300,000 to $11 million. That represents a 3,500% increase in your taxes. That's what you get, right? And people say to me, well, Joe, there's a Walmart. The Walmart's $20 million. That's double the value. And it's like, well, it's really not an apples-to-apples comparison because it's 34 acres to make a Walmart happen. This is on point 2. So this is the $20 million Walmart. Here's our building. This is my house. Those are my dogs. My dogs think they're lions. We do that to freak our neighbors out, by the way. It's real fun. But we're on 1/10 of an acre. We pay $2,000 in taxes. So if you had a 1-acre cookie cutter that fell into my neighborhood and grabbed our taxes, this is what we produce per acre in my neighborhood. That's my neighborhood's productivity, right? Y'all follow me? That's our crop yield. If you take that 1-acre cookie cutter, fly it in space and drive it on Walmart, and divide its tax bill by the 34 acres of my corporation is consumed, this is its tax yield per acre. If you had an acre of our building, this is what you get. I was presenting this in Colorado. I was like, let me make it really easy for you people in Colorado. Actually, this works in Canada now. If you had an acre to grow something, what are you going to grow? Cash crop, right? And people are like, well, Joe, we don't do it just for property taxes. We want the retail taxes. We take the losses in the Walmart for the gains in retail, which is kind of silly, but let's go ahead and run the numbers on the retail taxes. So here's property tax difference. Here's the retail tax difference. Who would have thought that we're selling 2 times the retail sales than that? We got a lot more residents than them, and we also have more jobs. So what I've found is that we haven't been conversant in making an apples-to-apples understanding of what's really going on, nor are we literate about how our tax system basically rewards the opposite. Now, what's funny about this is some people say to me, they're like, dude, what's your problem? Why do you hate Walmart? And I'm like, you're totally missing the point. So I presented at the International Association of Assessing Officers conference. Anybody hang out with a bunch of assessors? Can imagine 3,000 of them. It makes a planning conference feel like Burning Man by comparison. It's the scariest conference. But this guy was presenting at 8 in the morning, and he was presenting spreadsheet after spreadsheet on how cheap his buildings are. I'm in the back of the room drinking my coffee going, this is awesome. This guy's getting all of his property taxes lowered in one meeting. That's efficient. Now, the urbanist inside me was having a coronary because I'm like, how is he getting away with this? Why doesn't anybody care? Well, the assessors are agnostic. If you build low value, they can't make value out of it. It is what it is. So let me make it real simple for you. When you base your property tax system on property value, there's a perverse incentive for me as a developer to build junk in your community, period. Sorry to the architects in the room. We want to see more valuable buildings, but our tax system doesn't reward that. Just understand that. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Understand the tax system. Or a Walmart lasts as long as a cat. Sorry to the cat people in the room, but it's a 15-year building. That's what our tax system rewards. So I just want you to realize this isn't complex math that I'm doing here. It's 5th grade division. It's understanding productivity units. And when we do this, we talk about cars. We don't talk about cars on a miles per tank basis, do we? If we did, we'd all be driving Ford F-150s at 650 miles per tank. I didn't convert this to kilometers, sorry. But instead we say miles per gallon. The numbers change, and we should all be driving BMW Asettas at 70 miles per gallon. Understand the numbers, understand productivity. Land is all that you have to control, and understand where you're wasting it. So we've done this all across Canada, or the United States, Canada, up in Guelph, New Zealand, Australia. When you stack the numbers up, when you push all of our data together, this is the average regional tax. Somebody out in the states, we call them counties. Here you call them regions. This is what they pay out there versus the city resident to the same jurisdiction. This is the Walmart, the mall. This is a 2-story building, 3-story building, 6-story building. I'm not talking skyscrapers here, folks. I'm just talking about when you stack stories, you're stacking your wealth. And this could be in Driggs, Idaho, Durham, or Dallas. As soon as you start stacking these stories, you're stacking your community wealth. That urban environment is what created our wealth, and we've essentially destroyed it over 50 years. So this is just simple math. This isn't difficult to understand. Don't make it complex. Make it simple. This actually goes back to Ian McHarg. I've been raving about Ian McHarg this whole time. He even said it's all about an economic model. It's understanding the economics of your cities. So let's take Ian's world of using GIS layers to kind of map out those different economic layers of your community. And I can map your brain. I can also map your economics and give you an economic MRI. So this is back to Asheville. This is my county, 350 square miles, non-taxable in gray, green is low value, purple is high value. This is the Biltmore Estate. That's America's largest house. It's worth $100 million, one house. But it's not fair because it's a 180,000 square foot house on 2,000 acres of land. It's the biggest gas tank, right? So rather than total value, let's go value per acre. The map just changed. I'll show it to you in 3D. Anybody want to guess where downtown Asheville is? Boom, right there. And we could even see our little sister, Black Mountain. We can see its main street popping up much like this one. This is 10 miles away. We can see the physical effect of the finances of our city in a model. Let's build our wealth. We find weird things. This is one of my favorites, West Palm Beach, Florida. You can guess where the ocean is. We wiped out the ocean value. This is the human value of what we create in the man-made city. So you find things like this. This building at $10.5 million an acre is actually more productive than the skyscraper 2 blocks away at $9.2 million. So don't just assume that if I'm talking value and money, I'm talking big stuff. You can find your wealth in little stuff. This was kind of fun. I don't know if y'all are Trump supporters, but we grabbed all the Donald's property. The Donald's pull in $400,000 of value per acre, which is actually less productive than one of the poorest neighborhoods at $600,000. When I showed this to the city council, one of the councilors said to me, he goes, "Well, that's not right." And I said, "Correct." So, again, don't hate the player, hate the game. Understand what kind of game is going on and be literate about it. So retail taxes, this is Austin. You can guess where downtown Austin is. This is the property taxes. This is the amount of drinking they do in downtown Austin. They drink a lot. I think Halifax might look this way too, but here's the retail model. This is the mall zone in here. So you can see how much more productive the downtown is over the mall. And at a local level, let's go to Durango because it's an isolated, independent city. There's not a lot of other cities connected to it. But this is the property tax model of Durango. This is the mall, Home Depot, Walmart, it's all over here. This is the retail model. This is the total productivity. This is jobs. But I had a couple of folks, Tim and Peter. He has a coffee shop, and for some reason he sells a bunch of kitchen stuff. Peter owns a bookstore, and he loves honey. But anyway, they opened their books for us. This is their acres consumed. This is their property tax paid. These two independent businesses on Main Street are paying, 15 times the property taxes? Retail taxes, 5 times the retail taxes of a Walmart. Jobs. Now let me ask you the next level of economic questions. On which side of this ledger, the blue side or the gray side, who's hiring the local attorney, the local accountant, the local ad executive? This side, right? Now let's ask the social side. Who's volunteering for the planning board, the community cook-off or a blood drive? Is it this side or this side? If we aren't literate in our tax policies to see that we're actually essentially selling our own corporations and communities out, we don't see that they're also tearing apart our social structure and other economic opportunities. We have to understand this stuff. So if we're not measuring it, you can't manage it. This is just another little fun one. This is, anybody want to guess what this is? This is Redlands, California. We asked the community, we're like, what's that spike there? And they said, oh, it's got to be this thing. That's the tallest building downtown. It was actually this. This is 20 million an acre, this is 6 million. And you find things like this little shoe repair shop. Could you imagine trying to propose this in Halifax? Like what horse would you run me out of town on trying to propose that? It's probably illegal. But 3 acres of that would equal the 13-acre Walmart. There was a time we allowed the entrepreneurial activity to grow our communities up, and we've kind of forgotten that. We've lost that ability. But just for fun, they have this mall downtown that they tore apart a downtown down, and the mall's now kind of dying. So we went back into the Sanborn maps and pulled their history of what they used to have there. So here's the mall. This is what's left of downtown. So that's called foreshadowing right there, because this is what they threw away. So they essentially threw away $15 million of wealth in doing that development. As you look around your city, you will see these bombs that we dropped on ourselves for 50 years. We never ran this kind of economic analysis. We didn't think forward what we were doing. We were just modernizing. It's a new reality, right? And we weren't conscious of what we were doing to ourselves. So if you want to make America great again, we have a plan. Just go backward. Anyway, you're probably wondering about Canada. It's a lot of fun coming up here. And we did a project in Guelph. And I love pulling postcards of places. I'm like, what do you guys care about? Like little girls with Bambi and like highways? Like, anyway, this is Guelph. And, you can see the same American damage on the north side of Guelph, where they've essentially undervalued their development. Their downtown is clearly killing it. And this is the attitude of looking at your city through a different lens to see what kind of value you want to recreate. So they're talking about adding more purple stuff, right? It's real simple. We were in Auckland, and this is their sexy model here. And you can see their transit corridors coming out, which is really kind of cool. But I showed them a highway project we were doing in Asheville, and so this is this massive, count your blessings here, a 500-acre parcel of land that they're just talking about a highway, and they're not even thinking about the city. This is our downtown right here. So we started a citizens activist team to redesign the highway, and we took all of their spaghetti and kind of condensed it down to this. It's been going on since 2003. Our state is still fighting us over this. But basically what we're looking at is capturing our community back that's currently all right-of-way right here. So you can see what we do with public housing in the South. This is not fair. But how do you stitch this neighborhood back together? So go from this to this, this to this. So as we're drawing these images, we're also running the numbers on this. What kind of value does it create for the city? And just for the heck of it, we threw new civic space in, but this is all currently non-taxable. So to not do this development means that we're throwing away $111 million of tax opportunity for our community. So this pretty picture is worth $111 million to my community in city, county, and school taxes, right? So this is trying to get folks to understand this. As we were presenting this to New Zealand, this is what's kind of wild about people in New Zealand. They said, could we do this? We've got this, here's their city, you can see their density, and the corresponding tax values that come with it. They had these divots, this hole right here and this hole right there. And they're like, what is that? We're like, well, it's a lake and then a highway. So you might want to look at that highway. Can't change the lake. So anyway, they did this project where they looked at tearing down the overpass and the freeway infrastructure and essentially harvesting those taxes. This was 2 months after I showed them that last drawing. And we looked at the hole. And if you do nothing, they're like Toronto. If you do nothing, you're still going to see a rise in value. But if you do this intervention, you can actually harvest different tax rates, right? So this is if you do nothing, this is if you do the intervention, and here's the difference. So they've essentially seen that they can get $80 million of new rates or new taxes, and 2 months after this was done, they said, okay, we're moving on to another one. We've already decided we're going to do this. This is how fast they're reacting, and in Asheville, we're working on this for 20 years. Minneapolis, we did the same thing. Anybody want to guess where downtown Minneapolis is? Here's their retail. This is their downtown. This is Mall of America. That's the biggest mall in North America, and you can see how little retail taxes it produces next to downtown. So we did this just as for fun. This is this highway. We kind of covered it up. Basically, this is rush hour traffic in 9 o'clock. And so this is what they threw away. $655 million of their community they threw away. And that was then, in the 60s, when they did this. If you take today's thinking, they have these good infill buildings along the Greenway that they're doing. If you had that in here, that would be about $1.8 billion worth of development. All of Minneapolis is worth $42 billion. Let that wash over you for a second. This is what, 1/16 the entire value of the entire city? Or if you do this transit stuff by the university, which is like right there, if you put that there, this will add a value of $7 billion. A $42 billion city could have $7 billion if they just act on a project. Why not? Is this all too nerdy? You guys good with this? One last example. Actually, let me kind of skip ahead. We talked about the 7 generations. This is Lancaster, California, outside of Los Angeles, up and over the mountain. They have 953 miles of roads in their city, which will basically span from Los Angeles to Portland. So we put it on a timeline. Their great-grandparents went on a little road building spree. They went to sleep for a while. We stopped them right here. But their grandparents woke up and did this after World War II. Well, guess what? That's the first generation. That comes back to haunt you in a second generation here. So you have to rebuild all of those roads. Roads don't magically fix themselves. So that, when your parents were faced with that capital improvement bill, they go out and let out more development, more roads. So this comes back to haunt you in a second life cycle. It brings along with it this. So we just did a build-rebuild cycle of all of their infrastructure, and this is what it looks like. Do you all see a problem? That first wave isn't so bad. Well, it's kind of painful. It's painful again, but it gets more and more painful as time goes on. As you look around your city, realize how much stuff you've accrued and that it needs to be fixed and replaced. So if you don't have money for the Greenway, the art teacher, or the dancing traffic cop, it's not that you don't have the money, it's that you've buried it places. Final thing is the ROI. We did a project, these are your cousins in Lafayette, Louisiana. Y'all kicked them out of here and they moved down there. And the mayor told us they were broke. They're Cajuns, they're very funny people. There must be a humor thing connection, but we did this project with Chuck Marone. He's coming here. Y'all are having him here, next week or something? Go to his presentation, he's awesome. But they told us they were broke. We looked at their budgets. I'm seriously not making this up. This is the cover of their budget document from 20 years ago. This is their government about to get hit by a wave and eaten by a shark. And what do you think the politicians did when faced with this information? You don't even have to read the document. They just kicked the can down the road. To her credit, the finance officer was like, hey, did I mention how screwed we are? And then the third year, they finally acted. And they basically consolidated their city and their region together, like a agglomeration that you all had, taking down even more infrastructure. They were already going broke. This just kind of accelerated it. So this is all their city. This is downtown. This is some new urbanism here. That's the revenue. Roads cost money. When we were showing this to one of the counselors, he said this to us. It's not where you live, it's what you believe. What does that even mean? The public works director responded to this statement by saying this: there's no such thing as an infrastructure fairy. Which is hilarious. So we photoshopped Kevin in on that one. And so Kevin's like, run the numbers. Well, here's the problem. This is the debt load of all the roads that they've built. This is their actual revenue. If you're already feeling pain, it's not going to get better over time. So let me make it easier for you. Do you have enough blue to pay for your red? Your liability is 18 times your revenue. And you've already gone out to the bond market. They're skimming off the top of all of your money. You're going broke. This is the reason why. You own too much stuff. So this is a whole city floating in the harbor. This is the bill that we sent everybody to their parcel. This is their revenue. So we're going to net your revenue against your expenses. What's in the black, what's in the red. Here's the whole county region in 3D. And you can see how it's bleeding all over the place. If you just drop this on the floor so everything pops up vertically, this is what it looks like. If you're colorblind, this is probably easier for you. But this is, they told me, they're like, Joe, look, people really want to live out here. I'm like, yeah, that's what you're paying people to move out there. That's a subsidy. Account for it. And so, just make it simple, they had 34,000 people in 1950, 5 feet of pipe per person, 2.4 fire hydrants per thousand. They grew their population to 121,000. This is their feet of pipe per person today. Their fire hydrants per thousand today. A 350% growth in population, 1,000 and 2,000% growth in liability. Did y'all measure your pipes? Do you know how much you got? And they told us, they're like, Joe, no, but we got rich. We got oil money out of the Gulf. I'm like, all right, we'll measure that. Here's your household income adjusted for today's dollars then, and here it is today. You've gotten rich, but it's only 160% growth in wealth. That doesn't compensate for 1,000 and 2,000% growth in liability. So if we're not measuring this stuff and showing this stuff, we're essentially kicking the can down the road. We're going to have to deal with this. How am I doing on time? Am I up? Okay. One last example. Our country was formed on a tax revolt, and yet we don't even look at this stuff. So I'll use an American example that you all can relate to. This is Charleston. Charleston's an old place. We removed the value of the ocean on them. This is the human effect. But they have old buildings that were built before the United States, right? We have a birth date. So buildings like this is built in 1686. This is the oldest liquor store in the United States. That's a revolutionary getting his drink on. But here are all the old buildings, the colonial states buildings, right? There they are in plan, 21 acres of those buildings, and this is what they paid in county taxes. For you, it would be a regional tax, right? This is what the region got. $600,000. They pay a city tax and a bid tax on top of that. But this is what the region got. Out in the region, there's a Walmart, 21 acres. This is what it paid the same year. Now remember, this is going to be gone in 15 years. It'll be gone by 2020. If we're not looking at how we're building wealth, we won't have that wealth for those needs that we have, for affordable housing, for other purposes. We're essentially driving ourselves broke. And these aren't invisible market forces. This is tax policy that are driving these decisions and how we finance things. And you can hurt yourself with it. So just to close, looking around, we've seen this before. This is in Normandy, you were taxed on your building footprint, and people started projecting out over the street to avoid taxes. In England, you were taxed on your number of windows you had, and people started boarding up windows to avoid taxes. France, you were taxed below your roof line, so people stuck stories up here. When the tax assessor came out, they said, this is clearly the roof, right? This is all how our cities are shaped. And as designers, we need to be in tune to that, to understand the policies that are essentially inherently driving us broke. So we call this a form of geo-accounting. Your accountant doesn't care if you buy a boat, right? Your accountant cares if you can afford a boat. Just put the numbers out there, have an agnostic discussion about it, put them on a map. It's like, can you show people what's going on and do your math? Thank you.